大家好。你们好吗? Huh? Okay, that's all I have. I'll continue in English now, but yeah, how's everyone doing? I don't want to forget the ones in English. I hope you're all doing great and having a great conference so far. I definitely have. Super excited to be here. Thanks to the organization, so thank you for bringing me over. And yeah, today I'm going to share a little bit of history because I changed quite a bit, and I want to talk about 15 years of coding that didn't prepare me for what I'm doing today. And I got a special connection with this conference. 3 years ago, I helped promoting the conference, and they already proved to me what an amazing organization it is, because I got this sign sent home, and I go to many conferences that I don't even get a sign back home, and I love these. As you can see, I got like personal connection, so it was a great first connection with this conference. Now, for those that don't know me, I do many things, and those are the two major things that I currently work on. The first is Rocket Sim. It's like an Xcode developer tool that helps you become much more productive with like 30 extra features for the simulator. And the other one is my blog. I write a weekly article ever since 2017, so that's my longest streak that I just can't stop, so to say. But today we're going to talk about agent-driven development, and before we do, I kind of want to get to know you a little bit as well. So, who uses AI to code? Okay. Well, hopefully we get more hands after this talk. Who has let an agent open a pull request? Okay, that's good. And finally, who fully trusts AI code? Okay, we got a few. Which model are you using? No, it's okay. That is super good to know. But how did it all start? I want to take you a little bit back. And sometimes I feel old when I go back to this moment. But this is where it started for me. And we had to do things that you don't even think about today anymore. We had Xcode with multiple windows that we had to find and connect together. And I remember the table view of the Twitter app was state of the art. And I spent the whole day figuring out the best scroll performance, and this was the single line that I added to my code. But things improved. We got automatic reference counting, which took away memory management, which was amazing back in the days, because those were, we want to build things, we don't want to think about memory management. So this was a great speed improvement. And then there was Swift, a modern language, and Objective-C was great, but you only knew how great it was when we got Swift, and now we can't think about a world without Swift anymore. Swift UI was great too. At this point, we left behind the incremental builds that were missing. I remember my first project in Swift 1.1, which was terribly slow in compiling, and I was just spending ages writing code, hoping that it would build in one go. And then Swift UI was the next step, where we could say goodbye to auto layout. And I'm even showing the simple part of auto layout. There was also a difficult part, but I still don't understand that, so I skipped that. But it translated into this, which is much more readable. And once again, our productivity kind of improved. So things were smooth. You know, we got our processes in place, and development went fast, and the amounts of distraction were kind of okay-ish, because most of the things just worked. And of course, we wanted the speedy build times of Objective-C times. Still hoping for it for one day. But there's an interesting part to me, and if I look back to where it all started, there's like two big distraction points for me. And for me, it was Swift 1.1, and I found myself being distracted into, you know, social media quite a lot of times. And the thing is, when you do something and you go away from it, you never come back at the moment that it finished, unless you have some kind of like sound, like the build completed or something like that. And I realized the same happens to me when I do agentic coding, because you prompt something away, and then you finish, you wait for the agent to return, but I'm always late back to the result. So it's a real distraction window, and it all started for me with ChatGPT. I didn't really trust it. I was asking simple questions because I was like, it doesn't know the answer. And then I started to learn like, okay, it knows more than I think. I can ask more and more. And I really started to grow into what AI means and how it all can have an impact on what we do. And then I remember using Codex, and Codex was my first kind of integration with the projects that I have. And I did it all online, right? So I kind of kickstarted things in an environment that was not equal to my local environment. But it worked, and I could do things from the couch. While my wife thought I was watching a movie with her, I was actually working on my projects. And then I continued, and I'm not a terminal kind of developer, and I know some are, fully trusting the terminal, and that's just what they want to use. But for me, I kind of always need like an IDE. I need something visual, and as soon as I started using Cursor, things really kicked off for me, and it went really, really fast. But I do want to make clear that it doesn't really matter which model you use, which tool you use, because I think everybody has a different preference and a different way of working. So all of those moments in time brought new tools. But I realized that AI didn't only bring new tools like Codex, Cursor, or any other tool that you use. But for me, they really challenged my habits. I really had to reinvent myself. Even though I had so much experience, this was a completely new way of developing. So today I want to take you through the recent journey. And I think, if I'm completely honest, I think this even started last year in October, where I really started to kick things off. So first up, what changed for me? And I'm a solo developer now. I think that's a good context. I work on my own since 2024. And the impact on somebody like me that's working solo is insane, right? I suddenly hired 20 people with agents. And that's a big change. And this is a fundamental knowledge thing. I know how many of you use agents, but I'll try to explain some core concepts along the way. Obviously, you know Git, but what I didn't realize is that agents really heavily depend on Git. It's kind of their history, right? And what I always thought from my years of experience is that I will only commit things that I'm fully behind, because this will end up in the repository, and my colleagues might check my commits. So I'm not going to push anything until I find this code high enough quality. But I realized with agents, things are a bit different. So I was running multiple sub-agents locally in my local environment at the same time. And what I do is I create work trees. So I basically create copies of my project. And these are all similar copies of the same style. But at that point, I wasn't aware of work trees. I didn't use it. So I was just kicking off sub-agents everywhere. And I quickly realized, like, oh, wait a second. That agent stashed the changes of the other agent. And now I got changes that are mangled into each other. And things are just lost. And luckily enough, agents are smart and they can bring everything back because everything is in Git. But I also realized, like, maybe I should use commits in my advantage and actually use them to, create checkpoints, so to say. And if we visually look at that, it could be that you run your first agent task. You give it some kind of thing to do, and that's the first checkpoint. And then you commit those changes. It's not set in stone. You can revert commits, and that is the core thing that I learned. And what's especially interesting, by the time you're at agent run 3, you can actually say to the agent, okay, now we know how to build this. Let's throw away everything that we created, use the learnings, but write it in a much simpler way, reduce the tech depth, and create the best possible version of it. And those commits, those are gone. I used it as checkpoints, so things aren't lost. But I got myself in a much better place where I really embraced Git. And I also find myself at a point that I'm almost not writing any code anymore. And I got a long flight here, and normally I would always work on the plane, and I was almost scared to do so, because do I even know how to do that anymore? Honestly, I know, but I also realized that maybe it was not necessarily writing code that I liked, but it's mostly really building amazing products that I love using. And that's a realization that comes over time as soon as you start embracing AI more and more. And it feels like working with colleagues. As I said, it feels like I hired like 20 agents or something. But I also realized certain patterns from my time at WeTransfer, which is quite a large file transfer company in the Netherlands, in Europe, and I'm not sure if it's available in China, but I worked with a pretty large team, and we used to optimize a lot of things. We did pull requests. If you're an indie, you push to main. You don't need to do that. But now I had agents that opened PRs for me, that did autonomous work. And if you know me, then you know that I love automations. So I got agents working when I have lunch and stuff. So I realized, like, okay, I need to change the way I work because I need to review the code that's being produced. And that brought me back to little nitty things that I improved at WeTransfer, where we improved the whole PR automation pipeline. And you want to prevent repetition. AI is great at generating code, but it's also great at generating code that doesn't look like something you want to release. And if you have linters or formatters, you can get away a lot of the trouble that you would have in reviewing PRs by saying, like, hey, I want to have the static properties all the way in the top of my class, for example. Now, sometimes I let an agent build something, and I prompt, like, this is wrong, you need to try again. But if I'm not precise enough, the AI agent will try to solve it, but it will try to make the test succeed by fixing actually the broken path. And you don't always realize until the agent is 20 minutes further and done, and then you can revert and you can prompt again. So that was quite a learning. And it made me think, like, okay, I'm spending 20 minutes waiting for that agent to return, and now I need to tell it in a better way what to do. What if I instead prevent this all from happening and spend a little more time in the beginning? And that's what I mean with prevention beats correction, right? So if you catch a mistake beforehand, it takes you much less time, much less overhead. So part 2, how I'm experimenting, because I like to improve a lot. I briefly mentioned it before. I try to plan everything, create a detailed plan on what you're trying to build, because oftentimes you're surprised by the plan a model creates. And I'm sure many of you want to know which model I like to use. And my honest answer is that I try many models, and I don't try to stick with one. Because in my experience, many models have different outcomes. And a planning is a great moment where you can compare different plans by letting multiple plans at the same time create a version of the thing you want to build. And even if you think, like, okay, this is so easy to do, right? I can just do a single prompt. I would still use plan mode. And sometimes it just makes you think about things that you didn't think about. And that could level up the quality of the actual work that's going to be executed. And then I like to create a 3-layer quality gate, as I like to call it. So my sub-agents do the work. They open a PR. That could be any model, right? It could be Claude, it could be Codex, ChatGPT. But eventually there's a PR, and I want to have an external reviewer that is not biased, that has no context of what I try to build. Sometimes the context works in your advantage, and it actually helps. But for PR reviews, I kind of like want to have an external vision on the code that I try to merge. And for that, I, for example, use Copilot. And tests are even more important now, because the things that you already have in place, you want to make sure that it keeps working. And that's kind of like your quality gate automatically. Also for new things that you write, you want to write new tests for all that logic, which is now so much easier with the use of AI. And each model has blind spots. I have my favorite model for UI work. I have my favorite model for code architecture. And if one model did the task, then I want to use the other model to review the other parts, if that makes sense. And like I said, a cross-review catches way more often, and you can also use Cursor, Copilot, or Codex to review your PRs. Once again, it depends on your preference. Now, I like to use Cursor, and Cursor comes with an option to select multiple models. And when you do so, it will launch sub-agents at the same time. And this is a great way to get multiple variants of the plan that you want to execute. But also, if you're just getting started, this could be a great way to learn which model works best for you. If you're doing a lot of UI work, you might find out that the Claude models work better for you, and that becomes your favorite. But then a new model arrives, and you want to try this again. It's like a continuous quality loop that you think you should do. Now, there are async work patterns. I kind of want to make the most out of my time constantly. So just before I have lunch, I trigger a prompt, and I make it work. 20 minutes later, it's done. I'm probably still eating, but at least that work is already there for me to review. After lunch, I need to walk the dog every day. Just before I do, I quickly check, like, okay, is the agent done? Can I give it the next prompt, or is it good to go for a PR? And I might also trigger another prompt. And this is kind of an efficient way to make the most out of your time. And it once again changed the habit that I had, because I would always directly go out with the dog, and the dog is still adjusting. That's the trouble, but he'll be fine eventually. And this is kind of a dream, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to work in the weekends. I want to spend time with the family. But if I can somehow find a way to make the most out of my time constantly, then I can do so much more as an indie, right? I can embrace all the agents that we have so much more. Now, the next one is the give AI eyes principle, which makes so much sense to me now, and for you it might be still a question. So let's dive in. This is one of those things where I realized I might be in an AI bubble, because I'm using MCP here, and who knows what an MCP is? This is the thing with AI, right? Sometimes I think everybody uses it, and we're all already full on the AI boat. But there are so many technologies that are just not known by everyone. And MCP is one of those. It's a model context protocol, which is kind of like a standard for any app to adopt. It creates a server that you can connect with from your agent. And the agent first connects with the MCP. The MCP returns like, these are the tools that I offer. And then the agent can use one of those tools using the format that the tool kind of like sets and ask for a certain information. So for example, what I did, I use Amplitude as a tracking provider, which offers an MCP. So I can tell my agents, use the Amplitude MCP, fetch all the tracking data related to the onboarding of my app, analyze where are gaps, then use my Revenue Cat MCP to find out how free users use my app and paid users use my app, combine that data, and then analyze the code, because you're in my code project, and find out where we can have low-hanging fruit, easy improvements to the onboarding to improve the overall flow. And another thing that I did, which what you see right here on the slide, is I have my paywall. And I asked it, like, can you see the conversion of certain users? Where did it convert best? Which users or which features upsell the best? Eventually, I rewrote the copy using an agent skill, which I will explain further. It was a skill specified in marketing psychology. It optimized the copy for me. I also used some ASO best practices and stuff. All automated eventually, and the results are on the screen. And I already optimized a lot in that paywall. I really thought I was already at a high level, and this proved me wrong. There's so much more to get out of it. And this is another one that I really like, and I had a discussion the other day at a conference where we discussed, like, hey, Xcode instruments isn't that much used anymore. Back in 2009, what I said as an example, the Twitter scrolling performance, that was industry standard. To get to that quality, you really had to go into instruments, open the time profiler, and find out which methods are slow or which are fast. And nowadays, we are spoiled with great devices, right? It feels like it's less usable, but if you open Xcode instruments, you will see so many opportunities. And what you can now do is you can do a deep copy, as you can see in the drop-down. And when you copy that into your agent, you basically give it eyes on the real performance of your app. And the agent also has access to your code, so it can connect the dots. And that way it can easily find out like, hey, this is where it goes wrong, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to optimize. It comes with a plan, you execute it, and 9 out of 10 times you fix the performance issue. And this is a matter of minutes for me. If you open instruments and you grab that data, you let it just do its thing. It's such a great way to improve the performance of your applications. Now, I briefly mentioned agent skills. Who has used agent skills here? I see a few hands. Now I need to wait for the translation as well. That's interesting, but it's working out. So quite a few hands. Now, what I did, I write articles since 2017, and the downside of AI is that many of those articles aren't really read anymore, or at least I can see the visitors going down. And then I figured I might as well just jump on that boat myself. So I used all my articles, I combined it with WWDC sessions, and I created specified specialist agent skills for these 4 topics. And you should see them as context that you load into an agent for a certain prompt. So I would say like, hey, I want to optimize the Swift concurrency in this piece of code, make use of the Swift concurrency agent skill, so you're an expert on Swift concurrency, and give me the best possible version of this piece of code, as an example. And many think about agent skills as coding specialized skills, but I found more skills outside of my domain than coding related skills. And the reason is that most of the time I know pretty well how to do coding myself. I want skills that I'm not super good at. And this is one of my favorites. It's actually a repository with about 20 skills. And you start with one kind of like orchestrator skill that analyzes your whole project, becomes familiar with it, your type of messaging and stuff, and it will help you to improve your whole marketing setup for your task at hand. And if you can reduce the number of prompts, you kind of improve productivity. And this is another thing I try to experiment with quite a lot. If I can optimize the time spent, I will have more results and I will be faster in building what I actually want to build. Because if you think about a prompt, there's actually a cost for each prompt, right? You first write it, then you execute it. Depending on the task or the prompt that you executed, it will take longer or not. You wait for it to return, and like I said before, you will not stare at your screen and wait for it to return. You will do something else. So my experience is that you will always return back late, unless you use your phone in your hand to use social media. So in the background you can still see the task running and you're back as quickly as possible. But still, eventually you reveal the results, and depending on how good the results are, this will kind of be a loop and you'll start over again. So you can imagine if you can be a little bit better at one of those steps, then you can improve your productivity quite a bit. And I'm addicted to automating stuff and improving my whole workflow. So whenever I think I should not forget to do something, I try to see like, okay, wait a second. I'm asking myself this question every time. Can't I make this an automation? Can't I do this automatically? So trying to be like 1% better every day is kind of a mindset that really helps you improve your workflow. And at a certain point, you might not even realize anymore what you all automated, and things just go so much more smoother. So if you don't want to forget to ask Copilot for a review, automate it. Make it a setting in your repository. running tests, you can do it automatically. Your agents file, it's kind of an instruction file for any agent that you save in your repository. You want to keep that up to date. So if you see an agent making a mistake over and over again, you want to prompt in that session like, hey, let's update the agents file. Let's make sure this mistake does not happen again. And in the team, you can make these automated CI steps, right? You can make sure that everyone benefits from that improvement if you know it's kind of like a team guideline. And this can be compounding, right? Both Cursor and Codex now support automations. And you can actually say like, okay, every Monday, I want you to fetch all the sessions that I've had in this week. Analyze patterns. See if we asked for certain things every time again. And if so, update the agents file for me and open a PR. And this is a typical example of something that could execute on a Saturday while I'm enjoying time with my kids. And I'm still improving my whole workflow. And Monday morning, the first thing I do is I review it, press merge, and I'm in a better state. Imagine the compounding effect of that, right? Now, all these things combined together, I want to give you an example of what I recently did. So I used to have Rocket Sim documentation in Notion, which was easy for editing manually, but it was not really set up well for agentic development, so to say. So I decided to use AI to bring it into a static website, and that allowed AI to read all the documentation. It got a better sense of it. But I also had images in there, and while AI is great at understanding images, it wouldn't always get the context right for my developer tool. So I created a JSON that's connected with the image, and I gave AI eyes for each image that I have. So combined, I was able to create this flow. So every single day, I have a cron job that posts a tweet on the RocketSim Twitter account. Now, I'm all for authentic posts, but for a product kind of tweet account, I was kind of fine if it would be automated. And I felt like if it's added value for the ones that follow the account, if I tell them about a feature that I can actually use, I think they'll be fine with it too. But still, I wanted to improve, so I trained an agent skill myself based on the historic tweets that I wrote myself, which makes the new tweets that it will generate kind of feel the same. I used that JSON for each image to combine copy with an image that matches it. But what I also did is, and that's the PR that you see on the right side, every week it fetches analytics for the tweets that went out, and that gives AI eyes on the performance of the tweets. And it uses it to find out like, okay, which time works best for the audience? Which features get the most likes or retweets? And using that analysis, I improved the agent skill, which is also in that same repository. So the new tweets that we post will be optimized with that new knowledge. And I open a PR for that improvement so I can review it. And the email that you see on the left side actually has a link to the PR. So I can directly open that PR, review it, merge it in. And this is all automated. This just works for me. And there might be a tweet going out during this talk, I don't know. But it compounds and it improves the whole workflow. And that's kind of the point of this part. And if we look into the individual steps, you can see that there's the chapters that we kind of discussed as well, right? There's automation, there's an agent skill, we give AI eyes, and we optimize. And this is really how you combine all the things that we have today. And I'm not even mentioning, for example, MCPs. But you really need to try to connect all the dots together and find the most optimized workflow that fits you and your team. Now, it's not all smooth sailing. I had quite some traps as well. And I'm happy to share them with you, so you don't have to take the same traps as I did. And this is kind of funny. I saw that Clemens had kind of like a same chapter in his talk, caring about yourself. And more than ever, I feel like I need to do the same. I remember days at WeTransfer where I finally had no meetings, and I spent 2 hours in one flow writing code. And I would feel, great because I was productive, but I would also feel exhausted. You might recognize that. We were so deep in writing that code. And with AI, with multiple agents running at the same time, I constantly feel that much more often, multiple times per week, multiple times per day. So I really need to take care of myself. I need to sleep well, eat well, drink enough, also go out, walk the dog. You know, I really need to take care of myself, and I sometimes lost myself in that. So it's really a realization point. And it feels like the Champions League, basically, of development. And one thing that really messed it up for me is that I suddenly thought, like, okay, I can do things in parallel. I can do multiple things at the same time. So what I started to do is I started working on multiple different projects. But every prompt that you do is a context switch. You need to get yourself into that new project. And when I did multitasking with many different projects, it kind of bit me, and I didn't really make any progress anywhere. And as soon as I started to use sub-agents on the same project, for example, only on RocketSim, only on my developer tool, that's where I really started to progress. And in the same amount of time, I actually finished much more than if I would constantly context switch between projects. So keep context to one project. If it's really like a different kind of project, like a single prompt that is really quickly done, and it isn't like a mental overload, then I think it's okay. But I try to stay as close as possible to that single project for that period of time. Maybe for the morning, maybe for the full day, but really try to prevent context switching. And speed equals productivity, right? If you optimize and you can prompt more, you're more productive. But only if you do it with the right things. Now this one is interesting, and I'm not sure if everyone will hit this, but I never realized this was a problem for me. But the repository that I have was too large. I had some really large design assets in there, and worktrees create a copy of your repository. And at a certain point, I had 90 gigabytes, so 90 gigabytes of data being used just by worktrees. And on a MacBook with 1 terabyte data, it's fine, but I bought a Mac Mini, and that's also a trap, with only 256 gigabytes, which was not really useful. And my self-hosted runner complained quite rapidly. So I found myself spending time optimizing the size of my MacBook, which is not what I want to spend my time on. So at a certain point, and that's the benefit of being an indie, I could kind of do a code freeze. And I asked AI to rewrite the whole history, get those files out that shouldn't be in there, remove stale tags and branches and all those kind of things. And eventually I went down to like 15 gigabytes, and a clean checkout was only 24 MB, which is such a difference, right? The Git had, I need to say. And you can build anything, but you should not, right? You might have IDs, as many as Clemens had, maybe. I'm not sure, but whenever I have an ID, I try to open a GitHub issue to not forget about it. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, I can do so many things in parallel. Instead of creating a GitHub issue for it, I might as well just get started with that app and try to build it right away. But that's not the right motivation for doing something, and it could actually distract you away from the focus that you should have to be more successful. And this one is actually from a month ago. I worked on a post editor for RocketSim's screen capture. So you can create screenshots and videos from the simulator, but you couldn't really post edit it. You can trim, but you couldn't really change the device business and those things. So I was like, let's build that. And the first version worked quite rapidly. It's the classic 80%. But then I was testing it out and I saw a little bug. And the bug was there for years, but I was like, well, let's do just one more prompt before I open this PR. But then another issue arrived, and then I had to fix tests. And you know, I started to prompt more and more and more. And eventually I found myself getting lost in a really, really big PR. And that's not easy to review. So each step in that whole process became slower and slower. And so many file changes is just not manageable. But what it learned me is that I'm still in a good place. If you remember those checkpoints that we had earlier, I now basically had a really, really large checkpoint. So what I did, I asked an agent, okay, let's create a plan of this massive PR. Tell me what kind of steps I can take. I want small chunks that I can merge into master straight away. And I got really easy to review PRs with just like public modifiers changed or documentation changes and those kind of things. And before I know it, in a matter of a day, I merged everything in cleanly, and I know exactly what the code means because I read through everything in a much quicker way. And motivation is a key. It will be challenging if you build something. And if you don't have the right motivation, if you just start working on something because it's so easy with AI, you will eventually not get through when it becomes difficult. So you really have to have the right motivation, and I don't think money is the right motivation. Because this is actually what happens. I'm not sure if you've read the book Atomic Habits. It's one of my favorite books. People think they will release the app, and one day later they have 1,000 monthly recurring revenue. But the fact is that you might only have like 10 users after a month, and then after 2 months you might have 20. And that's where the moment hits, which is called the value of disappointment. And if you have the right intrinsic motivation, you will keep pushing through. It took me 2 years to make my first 1,000 monthly recurring revenue in Rocket Sim. And the next one was like only a year. It went so much faster, but you really need to push through that valley of disappointment. So just to give you a quick overview on that, never run those agents across multiple projects. Review your plan, right? Optimizing at the moment of planning is so much more efficient than doing it afterwards and having to fix everything. Embrace commits. Keep your PR small, easy to review. And speed without direction is just guaranteed chaos. So experienced developers still bring a lot. If you compare yourself to like a sales manager, I found out myself, the prompting efficiency is so much worse. And that's where developer experience really starts to shine. And I have a pretty clear animation for that, because my sales manager for Rocket Sim actually is developing, and he tells me constantly he's out of tokens, and I never reached my limit even. So I was like, how is this possible? But it turns out that he asks everything. He prompts super simple. He doesn't know the code base. We are so much more knowledgeable than you might realize. So you need to be skilled, right? There's still a craft of engineering. And we catch what AI can't see. AI thinks it's right, but without the right context, it might actually not be right. And it also depends on the prompts that you use. And if you do something complex, like architecture changes, that's really where your engineering knowledge will shine. So never blindly trust, know your context, right? If it's a small change, then maybe you can be a little easier there. But if it's a large refactor or security risks, you need to review carefully. And garbage in, garbage out, right? Eventually the garbage that goes in will be used for another agent to improve. So if you don't review, eventually you will have a project full of garbage that will train your agent to do the wrong thing, which is not what you want. So your 15 years of knowing what to build and what not to build, it really, really helps. And it's more valuable than ever. I really believe so. And I don't think it will change. I only think that we should embrace AI. So let's summarize with a few key takeaways that I want to make you bring home. Agent-driven development challenges your habits. You will have a new way of working, but it won't challenge your skills. Those transfer. You just need to use them differently. And your engineering judgment is still a quality gate that is super important. AI doesn't know everything. AI doesn't always know where you want to go. You need your experience and expertise to make sure it does the right thing. And invest in your environment, right? See if you can find things to improve, even if it's a little thing, but make yourself a better version tomorrow. Because if you think about it, 1% every day, it really, really compounds. And eventually you find yourself in such an efficient workflow that you might become an indie as well, or become more successful as a team. And if you do nothing else, if there's only one thing that you will do, always use plan mode. Commit after every task. Use a second model for review. Doesn't matter which one, as long as it's outside of the context, right? Add a MCP. Get yourself familiar with an MCP. See what it can do. Know what it does, because then it will ring a bell if you actually need one. and automate something. If you think I should not forget, see if you can actually automate that. And start tomorrow, improve 1% per day. And understand where you are. Everyone is at a different level, and that's okay, right? We're all progressing at our own pace. And take it step by step. I share you a lot of in-depth knowledge, but I started at level 1 myself last year. And I slowly but surely went deeper and deeper into it. I didn't use MCPs and agent skills on my first day. You know, take it slowly, and eventually you'll get where you want to be. And I feel like this is mandatory in an iOS talk, isn't it? But I actually wanted to do something special here, and I want to make you the first one to see this. I worked weeks on this, and it's a new agent skill which allows you to optimize your Xcode projects. And over the weeks, I invited more and more teams, and I also opened PRs to the most popular open source Xcode projects, so to say. And you can see the results here from top to down, what the impact was. And there's a connection, right? If you can optimize the time spent on building your project, you also optimize the time spent by agents building your projects. If they return quicker, they will have more time to do more stuff. So this is something I wanted to improve. And for Helm, it's hard to believe, they went from a zero change build time from 70 seconds to 9 seconds with just one build setting that was released like last WWDC. We've all seen that build setting arriving, but not everybody enables it. And this agent skill does that for you. And to give you a quick idea on how it works, it comes with 6 skills. But there's actually only one that you really need to use. It's an orchestrator skill that you ask to, hey, use the Xcode build optimization skill to analyze the Xcode project and find out what we can improve. And what it will do, it will run 3 clean builds and 3 incremental builds, and it will store that in a JSON file as a baseline, giving AI eyes on where we started. And then it will analyze all the different parts of the build logs using those 3 files per clean build and incremental build. And eventually it will come with a plan to you, telling you like, hey, these are the parts that you will likely need to improve to get better build times. You review the plan, because that's what we do, and eventually you execute it, and it will do the same 3 clean builds, 3 incremental builds, and it can compare the final result with the benchmark from the beginning. And that's how you get the build improvements, and you can optimize your whole flow. And finally, all these learnings, I don't throw them away. I keep a diary of all the learnings. That's also how I got to the version of this talk. And I'm using all that experience to really create a new course that will help anyone adopt AI, whether you're doing mobile development, phishing development, or maybe even web development. This could be a fundamental course that can help you adopt all the tools that I use today. And with that, I want to say Chishi, and thank you for your attention.